Okay, so what you can expect from this session. So I'm going to briefly talk to you about what it means to be living, working within a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. We've got Mike Moser here to talk about the Nature Recovery Plan and actions that you can all take away with you. Then the baton will be handed back to me and we'll talk about Pledge for Nature. And we've got a few exciting things coming up within Pledge for Nature that I wanted to make you aware of. We've got Sarah Jennings here to talk about Wild About Devon, and then we've got Pete Jollands, a town parish councillor representing Wild and Littleham and Landcross, and we've got Adrian Bryant here as well, parish councillor for Braunton, and here to talk about the Cane Catchment Beaver Partnership. So we've got lots of really exciting talks commencing, and so we can begin. My name's Emily Willoughby. I didn't introduce myself at the start. I'm Emily Willoughby. I'm the Pledge for Nature coordinator for the North Devon Biosphere. And the first thing many people ask us is, what is a UNESCO Biosphere? The biosphere within Northern Devon is part of a globally recognised network of biospheres across the world, and they're sites for where we can trial and test methods for sustainable development, and where we can prove that people can live, work in harmony with nature. The North Devon Biosphere stretches across a lot of Devon, so it actually encompasses North Devon, Mid Devon, Torridge, and parts of West Devon as well. And as you can see on the slide, it's actually 30% of Devon, and it encompasses quite a significant marine space expansing past Lundy Island, so it's quite a significant area with its core at Braunton boroughs. And the point of UNESCO Biospheres is that they've got three main functions, so conservation, sustainable development, and knowledge sharing. Now's a really exciting time to be working for the UNESCO Biosphere. We've got loads of really exciting projects happening, and I'm fortunate to be working on one of them. And that's something I'll talk to you a little bit later in this webinar this evening. So to kick us off, Mike, I'd like to invite you to unmute your microphone. Mike is chair of the North Devon Biospheres Nature Improvement Group, and we launched the Nature Recovery Plan in summer last year, but before that and during and now, loads of hard work has gone into its creation and implementation. So Mike is here to talk to us a bit more about that. Mike, are you there?
Great, thanks Em, and thanks to you all. Good evening for joining us for this webinar, which, as Em says, is part of a series that we've been running, including with businesses and with schools across the Biosphere Reserve. We're really trying to engage the broader community to help in an effort that the Biosphere Reserve Partnership is pushing to address the issue of nature recovery across this important area of Northern Devon. As you all know, the planet has passed the safe limits in terms of life for both climate and nature. And the trends that we're seeing across the globe are as apparent here in Northern Devon as they are internationally, if not more so in some cases. So it's really important that we tackle this issue. Many organisations have been doing lots for many years, and many of you as individuals and others in the community have been doing a tremendous amount individually. But it's not been enough to turn the tide against nature's recovery. And it's only by really working together and focusing on the real priorities that we're going to make a real difference. And that's why we've launched this Nature Recovery Plan, and why we're really keen to have these series of webinars to engage more communities in the effort. Next slide, please. So nature and the natural environment is incredibly important to Northern Devon. Nature itself has huge intrinsic value, of course, but it also supplies the landscape, the water, the soils, the climate on which we all depend. It underpins the economy of Northern Devon, whether it's tourism, agriculture, fisheries, forestry, and all the support services that those industries require. And it's incredibly important to our quality of life here for those who live and work here, but also those who visit. So it's really important that we look after these natural assets. Next slide, please. So Northern Devon gained UNESCO status because of its natural environment. It's because it's such an outstanding place. And this UNESCO recognition brought together a wide range of organizations to look at how we could better look after the area, testing new approaches to sustainable development. So it brought together the local authorities, the statutory agencies, the conservation NGOs, the universities, and increasingly businesses and others are getting involved in this effort. But despite all the efforts, both before and during the time of the UNESCO designation, we've not had succeeded in reversing and changing the downward spiral in nature. So that's why we've come together to put this ambitious nature recovery plan together. At the moment, the plan covers the landward component of the Biosphere Reserve, already a huge area stretching from Heartland right round to Linton and all the land that drains to the North Devon coast. But also, just as we speak now, there is also a new effort to develop an action plan also for the marine areas, so that by the end of this year, we will have a comprehensive nature recovery plan covering the whole area. Next slide, please. So what's the problem? Well, nature has been declining here for centuries, but there's been a marked acceleration in recent decades, to the extent that nature has become increasingly confined to fragments of our landscape, and even in some of those areas, nature is fading. Now, it's not happening equally across all areas. I mean, some of these rocky shores and coastal cliffs and coastal areas, for example, the loss of nature has been nothing like as marked as it has been further inland. But we're seeing particularly the flower-rich grasslands, some of the culm grasslands, which are so important to this area, scrub areas of woodlands and wetlands, which previously dominated the landscape here, being lost or being badly degraded. The root causes, and this was part of the start of the analysis that we did before we put the nature recovery plan together. A lot of this has been historical habitat conversion, but as I said, there's been a marked increase in intensification of land use in the most recent decades, which have really driven the acceleration that we've seen recently. And this intensification of land use has been accompanied by increasing application of nutrients onto the land and the use of pesticides and herbicides, all of which have been having an impact on nature. And this has been exacerbated also by the impacts of climate change, which we're beginning to see affecting wildlife across the area. And the consequences of all these pressures are a loss and a decline of wildlife species in our landscape. The landscape has lost the dynamism and the functionality that it needs from natural ecosystem processes, and is suffering from many aspects of degradation, particularly relating to soils, and also big impacts on the freshwater ecosystems. Next slide, please. If we look at a typical aerial view, this is the mid-Tor area, we can see some of these impacts occurring. If we take our woodlands, many of the woodlands are now just isolated fragments, and many of these are also conifer woodlands, artificialized woodlands, and the woodlands have become fenced off from the natural grasslands and also from the arable land that you can see here. And many of these areas, the grasslands and arable lands, are under really intensive management with relatively little value for nature. The floodplain wetlands along the Tor, which bisects this photograph from north to south, which would have been incredibly important for nature, have largely disappeared, and the river is now confined to a narrow corridor with little biodiversity. As I mentioned, the impacts on these freshwater environments from everything that we're doing on the land around it are also severe, and many of our water bodies are failing the international standards for water quality. In fact, only 15 of the 100 water bodies, that's sections of different river subcatchments across the North Devon biosphere, only 15 of them are in good ecological status. The net dynamism and connectivity from the habitats is missing, and this is having a huge impact on nature. So 44% of the breeding bird species are either in significant decline or have been lost, and iconic species like the Atlantic salmon, which was so abundant in the Tor and Torridge river systems, are now heading towards local extinction. Next slide, please. Of course, many of us think that development is also an important pressure on the environment, and indeed it is, but particularly on the coastal areas in northern Devon, where development has been particularly heavy. But in fact, often it's occurring on habitats which are already of relatively little importance for nature. And the expert group that looked at this don't feel that this sort of development is one of the main drivers for loss of nature across the landscapes in northern Devon. And in fact, urban and brownfield areas actually are providing many opportunities for nature recovery and for creation of new green space. Next slide, please. So what are we doing about it? Well, as Emily mentioned, we spent last year more than 50 specialists from the 20 sort of key organisations that are working for nature across the area of northern Devon. We spent a significant amount of time trying to identify the priorities for nature recovery across the area. And this led to the publication and adoption of the Nature Recovery Plan, which is split into these 5 different action plans for the main habitats of the North Devon biosphere. As I said, there will be a further action plan added for the marine element in the coming months. And these action plans identified the priorities for nature recovery in terms of key priorities for the habitats, key priorities for the species, and enabling actions that need to be undertaken, such as community engagement, business engagement, to make the nature recovery plan happen. Now, in the short time we've got available, I'm not going to be able to give you any detail as to what's actually in here. So I'd just like to give you a flavour of what's in these action plans. Next slide, please. So the top priority of all is to make more space for nature in terms of habitat restoration and creation. Creation of new flower-rich grasslands, wet meadows, for example, culm grasslands, creation of new woodlands and scrub areas to make more space to expand out from the remnants of these habitats that are remaining. To create more wetlands, for example, in the coastal zone, but also riverine floodplains, ponds in gardens, ponds on farms, restoration of the peatlands in the upper catchments of the Tor and Torridge systems on Dartmoor and Exmoor. So this is a really crucial area, and ensuring connectivity and dynamism between these different habitat types. Next slide, please. The next main focus is on species recovery and reintroductions, and we got some really ambitious and exciting targets in there. Firstly, focusing on some of the Devon special species which have been identified, which are hosted in northern Devon, such as the dormouse here. Efforts to make safe roosts, for example, for the shorebirds which are wintering on the Tor and Torridge estuary, which are hugely subject to pressure from disturbance, increasing disturbance from walkers, dog walkers. and there is a real need to establish safe roosts for these birds around the estuary. So that's a major target in the Nature Recovery Plan. And we've got some really exciting reintroduction plans for species like beavers. You're going to be hearing from Adrian Bryant in a minute about one of the exciting efforts that's underway, but also for species like water vole. And we'd really like to see things like white-tailed eagle back breeding on Lundy, white stork breeding in the coastal wetlands around the estuary. Huge opportunities there to do some really exciting things for nature. Next slide, please. The plan also focuses very heavily on working with communities to integrate nature into farmland and urban areas. Working with farmers to promote regenerative agriculture, which can improve the soils and bring nature back into the farmed landscape. Working using the new schemes and subsidies that are going to be available as the subsidy system changes from the basic payment that farmers get at the moment to the new environmental land management scheme, which provides huge opportunities for nature recovery across the area. And working with the planning authorities to integrate nature into new developments. There are some really exciting new opportunities that we're working with the councils on to look at how that can be achieved. Next slide, please. So community engagement is really critical to achieving this. We know that with the organizations alone, we've not been able to stem the tide in nature's decline. And so it's only by focusing on these priorities and engaging right across the community that we're really going to make a difference. And that's why the plan gives such attention to working with farmers, with businesses, with schools, with parish councils, with community groups to make the real difference here. We know what needs doing. Next slide, please. So we have a good idea now as to what the priorities are. We know what needs doing, but the key thing is to engage everyone in this effort. Already in your communities, there's lots going on the ground, but we know that community groups, parish councils can show huge leadership in driving this process and this initiative forward. Many of you, as I said already, are already doing this. So there are 6 actions which I'd really like you to think about and consider what you might be able to do, whether you are already a parish councillor or whether you're someone in your community who's willing to raise your head above the parapet and take an initiative to the community through a community group, through the parish council, to do something for nature in your area. The first action would be to invite you to sign our Nature Recovery Declaration. This is a declaration that we launched with the launch of the plan. More than 500 people have already done so, and lots of the key organizations, I think it's about 40 or 50 key organizations, have already signed this. We would like your parish council or your community group to sign the Nature Recovery Declaration as a first step to show your willingness to engage with this. The second thing would be to look at establishing a nature recovery group, either as a subgroup within your parish council or with interested residents. There are several examples of groups popping up across the Biosphere Reserve. And I think it's only by getting together as a group that really you can harness the power of the community to look at moving towards implementation of a nature recovery plan yourselves. And I think establishing a nature recovery plan at a real local level of practical things that you can do is a really key way forward that you can work. And we're absolutely ready to work with you to help you do that. Sharing information about the state of nature and about what the community can do is a key action that you can all take. And of course, there are the real practical things that you can do. If you are a parish council or if you're a community group, there may be certain spaces in your community where you have some control over what is being done. And here there are huge opportunities to improve the area for nature, whether it's putting in new trees, establishing areas of scrub, wildflower patches, new ponds, log piles, nest boxes. There's a huge amount that can be done to help nature, and there are examples of that going on, as Emily will say, all across the area. You can reduce your impact on nature by reusing and recycling resources, by avoiding and reducing the use of pesticides, herbicides, peat-based products, plastics, and sourcing local nature-friendly food. And many of you will be already doing this. And then finally, and really critical to us being able to assess what is going on across the area and to track progress, we'd really be grateful if you could help us by telling us what you're doing. And we have a mechanism through the Pledge for Nature project for recording what's going on across the community. So final slide, please. So our ask from tonight is really to see if you would be willing to take the step forward to engage your community in a structured effort along with other communities across the Biosphere Reserve to help us implement the nature recovery plan. We are absolutely ready to help. There is quite a lot of expertise out there. There's also quite a lot of information out there. Many of you will be in the lucky position of having parish biodiversity audits already completed for your parish. That's something fantastic to build on. You may not be aware that you've got them, but it's a fantastic source of information and something you can use to start developing a nature recovery plan. There are also funds available, and I think we'll be hearing more about that from others. So in the discussion after the presentations, we'd be really interested, really grateful to hear what you're already doing, but also whether you might be willing to step up in a more structured way to working with others across the biosphere to really try and make a difference for nature. It's the only way we're going to tackle this really serious problem that we've got. So thanks very much for listening, and I'll hand back to Emily.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was a brilliant presentation. It's so good to hear of all the work that's happening across the biosphere, so thank you for that. It's brilliant. So I'm just going to take a couple minutes of your time now just to talk about Pledge for Nature. For those of you who missed my introduction at the start, my name is Emily Willoughby and I coordinate the Pledge for Nature project for the North Devon Biosphere. Pledge for Nature is a project that tries to galvanise community action for improving nature and increasing biodiversity across the biosphere. And as Mike alluded to, we've got loads of resources on how people can do that, from a garden and household level to schools, to businesses and councils. So this is just a snapshot taken from the website. And we've probably got about, I think, between 15 and 20 different knowledge centres for what you can do at home or in your community to improve nature. So for things like creating a wildlife pond, to farmers managing their soil better, or if you wanted to engage in some citizen science and contribute to the scientific community, we've got links on how you can do that locally as well. So there's so much that people can be getting on with, and it's really my job to try and signpost people to be doing these things. Mike mentioned add your what you're doing for nature to our pledge map, and this is what our current pledge map looks like. We've got over 900 pledges for nature on the pledge map currently, which is brilliant. There is so much going on across the biosphere and outside of the biosphere as well. All of the little pins mean something different, so everyone's doing something different for nature. So the little yellow pins mean they've signed the Nature Recovery Declaration, which is something I'll talk about in a moment. But as I said, it ranges from putting up a bird box to creating wildflower patches, creating ponds, making space for hedgehog highways across gardens in a community. And there's really is so much going on. But as Mike mentioned, in order for us to understand how much nature has declined and how much we're contributing to its improvement, this is a really useful mechanism for us to understand what's going on. So if you're thinking about things that you have done or you're planning to do in your garden or in your local community, please add it to the pledge map. It will just make our image of the biosphere that little bit richer. So we've talked about the Nature Recovery Declaration. This was launched as an accompaniment to the Nature Recovery Plan, and it really acts as a first step to making that improvement for nature, whether that be in your home, in your school, business, organisation, or local environment in your community. So we've got an option for different groups to sign the declaration, and we've had over 500 signatures for it so far, which is brilliant. And it just gives you as a business or an organisation or a local council a good idea of what you can do within your remit to improve nature, as I said. I will be sending out links to information after this webinar, probably next week. So you'll receive the link on how to sign the declaration. Then I'm sure some of you might want to see your local environmental group or your local town or parish council added to the lists that you can see on your screen. So we invite you all to sign the declaration. As part of the Pledge for Nature project, we've got a small fund available for resources for communities. Obviously, we understand that some projects for nature improvement require a little bit of funds to put behind it. We're really fortunate that holidaycottages.co.uk, otherwise locally known as Travel Chapter, have contributed to our Community Nature Recovery Challenge Fund. Now, I think this has been launched 2 or 3 times prior to me explaining this to you now. And it's something that we try and launch a couple times a year just to give people a little bit of money to try and contribute to improving nature in public community shared spaces. Don't be alarmed that you can see that the deadline for applications is the 31st of March. That's just for this round. So if you haven't seen this advertised on social media and you do want to make an application, then you may as well start to make an application, and then you can maybe submit it once we've launched the next round of it, which will be in a couple or a few months' time. So no need to panic. Successful applications will be assessed for how well they will improve nature, who will benefit the space, how much nature will benefit the space, and how that space will be managed over the coming years. So we've had some excellent applications in from schools in particular, but we're always hoping that communities will put in applications for this grant as well. Now, it might be a small grant in comparison to other grants that are available, but it really does give a nice kickstart to a project, and it gets people thinking and motivated about their local space. So I look forward to hearing from some of you about this fund. While I'm here, obviously it's part of my role to talk with businesses about nature improvement. So if you own a business or work for an employer within the North Devon Biosphere and they're doing loads for nature, or you want them to do a bit more, then we invite you to sign up for the North Devon Biosphere Business Partner Scheme. If you've got any businesses within your locality, like I said, that you think are doing really well, then please encourage them to sign up. I think the main benefit from this accreditation scheme is the huge network that businesses can join, and it's across a wide range of industries as well. I think people just have to make a few commitments across the following categories: so conservation, local development, and awareness raising. So if you know of any businesses that you think are already doing loads or need to do a bit more, then have a look at our website, and yeah, there'll be more information about it on there. So the link for the website is on your screen right now, but like I said, I will send it out to you afterwards, and my work email address is there as well if anyone wants to get in touch with me directly about Pledge for Nature or the grants or anything discussed in the webinar this evening. So now it's time for our second guest speaker. So I'm going to invite Sarah Jennings to unmute her microphone, and she's going to talk to us about the Wild About Devon project.
Thanks, Emily. So hi.
Oh, sorry, Sarah, you've just muted.
Oh, I did.
There we go.
Is that okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll start again. Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Jennings. I'm the county ecologist at Devon County Council and also the Devon Local Nature Partnership Manager. I have also just got my first cold in 2.5 years, so bear with me. I don't know if I can talk very well. So I'm going to just very quickly talk to you about Wild About Devon, which is a county-wide initiative. So it's very much like what's going on in the Biosphere, but across the county. Next slide, Emily. In case you don't know about the Devon Local Nature Partnership, which you probably don't, I thought I'd just say something very quickly. So it's a strategic partnership that was set up the government encouraged us all to set up local nature partnerships to work with the economy and health sectors particularly. And we've got 3 main aims, which are to deliver a nature recovery network across Devon, to respond to the climate emergency, and to connect people and nature. So the map here shows you a bit about what we'd like to achieve across Devon. So connected streams, hedges, river corridors, shows you Devon, Dartmoor, Exmoor, a bit of an artistic impression of what we're trying to achieve. So the Local Nature Partnership is run by a cross-sector board. We have a working group, and we also have a forum of thousands of individuals and organisations who are trying to work together to achieve a nature recovery network. We do loads of stuff to do with the health service, so very much like the Biosphere work really, but across the county. So if you want to know more, have a look at our website, which is in evolution, so bear with us. Next slide. So Wild About Devon really was born out of an event that we held in the good old days when we could all get together and not just talk to each other on a screen in the summer of 2019. So as part of the work of the Local Nature Partnership, I talked to a few people and thought that we really ought to be supporting communities to do more for wildlife. And there was nothing out there across the county that provided that support framework. So to kick it off, I organised a community conference at Chagford. So it was an all-day event, which Mike Moser attended. It was lovely. It was a beautiful day. We had lots of different groups going out looking at hedges, as you see here. It's Rob Walton, who many of you might know, looking at a churchyard, green spaces, all sorts of things. And interestingly, as soon as I emailed this out to parish and town councils, it was sold out virtually in minutes. And there was just massive enthusiasm from everybody there, particularly just loved being able to meet other people who are dealing with similar issues, particularly to do with grass cutting churchyards, the whole culture around that. And honestly, it was just quite emotional, really, the sort of the feedback that we got from the day. So after that, we did have a workshop during the day, looking at what we could do strategically to help communities and thinking about different options. And then, next slide, Emily. We decided to launch Wild About Devon. So this is the Community Action for Wildlife Initiative. Next slide. So we launched Wild About Devon in June last year. We have a small steering group, advisors really overseeing it, which includes the Devon Association of Local Councils, so CARA from that organisation, the North Devon Biosphere, North Devon OMB, Devon Communities Together, a few parish council reps, so lots of relevant organisations to help oversee Wild About Devon, and it has 2 parts. So we decided, after lots of discussion, to split it into all community groups, so any community groups that want to do something for wildlife, but also decided that we did want to have, and this is very much work in progress, so we still need lots of feedback from you, but to have a parish and town council wildlife network across the county. And the Devon Association of Local Councils are really keen to have this because they were getting lots of inquiries that they didn't know what to do with. So we set it up partly because parish and town councils obviously have specific powers and functions, but also very importantly because parish and town councils have a statutory duty, and I hope you're all aware of this, to conserve wildlife. And this duty is going to be strengthened through the Environment Act. So all local authorities, public bodies have got this duty, and we don't yet know how it's being strengthened, but DEFRA are producing lots of guidance to do with the Environment Act at the moment. So when we know what this means for parish and town councils, then we will let you know. And to find out more about this initiative, it's all on our website, so the link is there. Next slide, Emily. So I'm just going to rattle through this very quickly because I was given 5 minutes, I think. So Wildfire Devon includes various things. So one of them is a 3-minute animation that we showed at the launch last June. So it is there to inspire action. It's very simple. It's only 3 minutes, so it's perfect to show at parish and town council meetings to try and get everybody inspired to do something. And it's narrated by the wonderful Audrey Compton, who also spoke at our launch, who set up and runs Teignbridge Wildlife Wardens in the Teign Valley. Next slide. We also, so very similar to the Biosphere, we have guidance, information and links on the LNP website for community groups. So it includes lots of information on funding from Devon County Council's funding team, surveys, habitat management, current partner projects across the county that people can get involved in, useful contacts, so lots of consultants who might be able to help you, all the different organisations. I realise that lots of people don't know that Devon Biodiversity Records Centre, for instance, exists, or that we have Devon Birds, or we have the Devon Mammals Group. There are all sorts of organisations across the county. So we wanted to just make this much more visible to everybody. So we're trying to evolve the website so that we have got that visibility. And we've got useful links. So I've shown here the Devon County Council Environment Viewer, which you can go on, and it shows you lots of designations for wildlife, but you can overlay it with the historic landscape and public rights of way and flooding. And so you can zoom right in to your parish and find out what information already exists. So if you haven't looked at the Environment Viewer, then do have a look, because it will provide you with lots of good information to help you kickstart what you want to do for wildlife. As I say, it's all evolving, so do please send us information to share with others on the website. One of the things that came out of Chadford is that there are lots of people across the county potentially producing the same information, which is a total waste of time. So we thought if we can get everything into one place, then we can stop people reinventing the wheel and we can share it. So if you've got really good stuff that you can share with others in East Devon or South Hams or whatever, then please let us know. And also, please take a look and let us know how we can improve the pages. Next slide, Emily. We also set up, so you've got the pledge map in the Biosphere, and what we've set up is a community wildlife group map. So this is another way to help community groups to link with each other. So, so we're encouraging all community wildlife groups, parish and town councils, anyone who's doing good stuff for wildlife, to put themselves on the map. And then it links to your website, and then people can find out what you're up to and whether you might be able to help them. So if you're doing lots of work on swifts, then you might be able to talk to somebody else in another part of the county. So it's another way just to try and share expertise and get everybody chatting. And it's also a new thing that was done by A-Doddle, which is a little business based in Dawlish. So it's really nice to be able to support them into doing this. And we are about to link up with the climate partnership as well and get lots of climate groups. Often it's quite similar groups. So to get all of those onto this map as well. Next slide. We also have been organising, I don't know if any of you have attended or spoken, but organising monthly free wildlife webinars. So again, there's lots of this going on across the county at the moment, all sorts of organisations doing webinars, but we have all sorts of topics. And so if there's anything that you do want us to organise, then let us know. And then again, it's a good way of sharing expertise across the county. And in April, we are organising a webinar solely for parish and town councils, which is when we had the launch in June last year, we had to stop the discussion on grass cutting. There were lots of people who wanted to talk about grass cutting and culture. And how do we get across, stop people mowing everything? So we are focusing it on 3 things, which are pesticides, grass cutting and tree planting. So we've got Devon Wildlife Trust talking about pesticides. We have Teignbridge District Council's green space people talking about grass cutting, and we have a few people, so John from the Forestry Commission, Devon Wildlife Trust and the DCC talking about tree planting. But there'll be lots of, it's a very much a discussion focused event, and we have just confirmed it's on the 29th of April, so we'll be writing to all parish and town councils inviting you to that event. Next slide. We also, so one of the members of the steering group from South Devon was really keen to set up some awards, which is something we've been trying to do for ages. So we finally launched this. So we have got Devon Wildlife Community of the Year Awards, and it has a category. for parish and town councils. So if you are doing great stuff, perhaps for beavers, Adrian, then do have a look at this and put yourself forward. The closing, you've got ages to apply, closing date is 15th of July. And again, this is really one way of just trying to flush out all the really exciting things that people are doing across the county and to celebrate it. And so we'll have a big awards ceremony, maybe at, we try and have an annual Devon Local Nature Partnership conference with about 250 odd people. Obviously, we haven't been able to do that for ages, but we need to start doing that sort of stuff again so we can have the awards ceremony then with lots of great prizes as well. Next slide. We also, specifically for parish and town councils, have a Wild About Devon newsletter. So a few editions of this have gone out, and the aim is to provide updates on funding, on wildlife issues, projects, legislation, and also ideally to have case studies as well, so that parish and town councils can inspire each other with all the great stuff that they're doing. So please do send us articles or let us know what you want in the newsletter. Next slide. Almost finished, I think, yes. And as they have in the Biosphere, we have got a little Wild About Devon grant scheme. So this has come from the Devon Environment Foundation, which is a great organisation dishing out money for environmental projects across the county. They're getting lots of inquiries from community groups. They don't have the capacity to deal with all of those. So we thought we'd do this quite small scale initially to see how it goes. So we've got 5k at the moment for quite small scale projects. It's being run by Devon communities together. We'll see how it goes and then talk to Devon Environment Foundation about whether we can keep that going. There are no deadlines, so it's first come, first served. And I think, Emily, yeah, that's it. So that was just a quick rattle through of Wild About Devon, what we're trying to do across the county. So great to link up with Biosphere, promote all the brilliant stuff that you're doing. It is Wild About Devon is very high level, strategic. And so, you know, we're very much promoting what the Wildlife Trust and Biosphere and other organisations are doing on the ground. So have a look at our website, and Mike Waller is the Devon LMP coordinator. So if you have any ideas, please do email Mike. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was really informative. Really good to hear that so much is happening across Devon as well. Pete, are you able to unmute yourself, and then we'll hear from you about Wilder, Littleham and Landcross. Thank you.
I think I've done it. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Okay, brilliant. Okay, I'll try and keep this relatively brief. So yeah, I'm Pete Jollands from Littleham and Landcross, parish councillor. I'm also a member of the biodiversity group and the climate action group. Okay, so a little bit of background to what we're doing in Littleham. We made a draft action plan for a climate action plan covering all aspects of the climate emergency in 2021. We actually started it before COVID, but then it all got slowed down. I wasn't a parish councillor then, but a lot of the parish councillors were involved. The chair of the parish councillor at that point was a COVID denier. Not COVID denier, a climate denier. He believed in COVID. He didn't believe in climate change or climate action. So that was a problem, but that's all changed now. So we're moving forward. We decided that we needed community engagement with a starting point, obviously, and obviously the simple thing is to focus on biodiversity, gardening for wildlife. So we put a lottery application in. Next slide, please. And this is the event we were planning. We planned this on the assumption that we wouldn't get the lottery grant, and so the parish council were persuaded to give us £500 for anything we wanted to do. And so it happened last Saturday, and we had a talk by somebody from Rosemore, which is our sort of give it a bit of respectability. And and Emily obviously had COVID, so she couldn't turn up, but that was planned. Lots of displays and free to take away. So before we got the lottery grant, we decided to give away wildflower seeds, some bird and bat boxes. We had volunteers making those in the village. Some hedgehog boxes similarly, and we decided to make simple tin can bee homes with tin cans and bits of bamboo. So relatively cheap, a cheap thing. We asked for photos of wildlife, and that was great. So next slide, please. on the 1st of March, after 3 months waiting, we finally got the, we're told we had the lottery application. And so suddenly we had to buy things because part of the application was to do lots of giveaways, to engage people and to get them there. And so this is something I just put up on Facebook just before the event. We had plants for pollinators, really nice was those, house martin nest boxes, hedgehog boxes, bat boxes, etc. All these were chosen because they fitted in with the Biosphere recovery plan. They were specifically, that was part of the application and linking to that. So we had to buy up, we had a lot of money to buy all these sort of things, and the event went ahead on Saturday. So next slide, please. There it is. We had a really good turnout. About 50 or 60 people turned up from the village, which is pretty good. The village has got about 200 households, I think, in it. It's relatively small. There were a lot of adults there and some kids as well, because we decided that we needed to have some activities for kids. And so making our own bee hotel, we had somebody brought lots of invertebrates from the river, microscopes, tadpoles, make your own clay animals, or anything we could think of was just to get kids there. And we had lots of volunteers to help us with the day and with the setup and what have you. We also had Torres District Council were there, Donna Sibley was there, and we had a stand from 361 Energy. And the reason we did that was because we sort of acting by stealth, if you like. We wanted to get people engaged in the community through wildlife and through biodiversity, but we also wanted to think about what else could we do towards the whole climate action thing. And we had a board where people could say what they would like to see next. And the biggest one was on energy and insulation and things related to that. So that was just like a teaser for the next event. It was pretty well received. And the next slide, please. So this is one of the activities which was put up for the kids. Basically, the kids made little clay animals, and that was, I think, probably one of the most successful things in the whole thing. So we just got a bit wilder, and a final slide, if it works. It may not work. Did my final slide ever work?
Yeah, no, I had to get rid of it because it's
I got rid of my final slide.
Sorry.
we got some wildlife cameras to the trail cams to put out in the community. We've got some beautiful shots of buzzards eating things. We've got herons, we've got foxes, we've got all sorts. And the idea is to post all these on the Littleham and Landcross website. Is to get people to post pictures of the wildflower seeds we gave them when they're germinated, and also crucially to sign up for your Pledge for Nature. We try to encourage them to do that. So I will remind people continuously that if they're putting up a bat box, a bird box, a house martin box, they must sign up to your thing. So that's what we did in Littleham, and it was pretty well received, and it was pretty exhausting, but it was a lot of fun. So thank you very much.
Well done, Pete. Thank you very much. And you'll have to let me know once those animal cams are up and available on the website, and I can share them with the groups that they can enjoy them as they were supposed to today.
Will do.
So thank you. That's brilliant. So now it's time for our final speaker, Adrian Bryant, who is a parish councillor for Braunton. And he's here to talk to us about the Cane Catchment Beaver Partnership. So Adrian.
Hi Emily, and thanks for introducing me, and thanks to the other speakers. Really enjoyed that, particularly looking forward to the next Chagford Wildlife Conference or wherever, because I actually attended that and it was inspiring, brilliant and thought-provoking, and it made me feel that I wasn't on my own because there were so many other people there. Whereas that's one of the problems I think I have with all this stuff is a lot of the time you feel that you're on your own. So events like that, they really do make a difference. So thanks for that. Okay, so the Cane Catchment Beaver project. how did I get onto that? And it was this, flooding in Braunton. In 2012, we had dramatic floods in the centre of Braunton. 3 of these slides are Cane Street, which, if you don't know, Braunton is one of the main shopping streets. So it devastated businesses, cost lots of money, and caused havoc right across Braunton. Lots of people's homes were flooded too. And I wasn't the parish councillor then, I was just a resident, and I live a mile outside of Braunton. But I went down to have a look at what was going on. It was like some kind of war scene, well, apocalyptic scene, a scene of devastation, people chucking carpets out of windows and sweeping water out of their houses. And it did have an effect on me. And I stood there and thought, I can't do anything about this, but I would love to. And step forward to 2019, and someone asked me to stand for the parish council in Braunton. And I thought, well, that's an interesting idea, I'll have a go at that. And surprisingly, was elected. And from that very first moment of being elected, we at the first meeting at Braunton Parish Council, we talked about the climate emergency. And I thought, well, that's right up my street. I really would like to get involved with that. And we declared the climate emergency in June of 2019, and then thought, well, what should we do now? And that's one of the things with declaring climate emergencies and such, like you then have to do something, and that is hard. How to, and I'm so glad that you're highlighting with your map and everything else that's going on what people are doing, because you're providing a route map for to encourage people, to inspire people, and one of the things with being a parish councillor is that you get invited to events and things like the Chagford conference, but also locally I got invited to an event at Braunton Countryside Centre. Next slide, please. There we go, there's the Braunton Countryside Centre. And I attended several events there, things like Life on the Verge, which is all about planting up verges in your local parish with wildflowers to provide nature corridors. Brilliant idea. And then one of those events was a film called The Beaver Believers, and it's a North American film. And I turned up just as it was about to start, and the room was absolutely packed. Couldn't believe it. And there was so much enthusiasm and energy in the room. It was just extraordinary. And I watched the film, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. That's what goes on in North America. And then someone came on from the National Trust called Ben Eardley, and he talked about what was going on with the National Trust at Holnacote House, at Porlock. And what he was doing was putting a beaver enclosure there on National Trust land. And then as I cycled home that night, I cycled past the floodplain, which was in 2012 was absolutely full of water. Extraordinary. Never seen anything like it. Normally there's just like a ribbon of stream flowing through a field with cows in. But in 2012, there wouldn't have been any cows, they would have been swimming. It was just absolutely covered. So I thought about that, and I thought about what I'd seen on the Beaver Believers film. I thought, that landscape there, I reckon beavers could be in there, but at that time I didn't know anything about Eurasian beavers. And one thing I must point out here is that I'm not some kind of wildlife expert at all. I'm interested in environmental issues. But so with this beaver project, I'm like anyone on here. Anyone can do a project like this. You just have to go out and talk to the right people. And anyway, so time went on, and I forgot about the beavers. And then I like to watch Countryfile. Countryfile came on. There was Ben Eardley, who I'd seen at the Braunton Countryside Centre. talking. He got his enclosure done, and there were the beavers. I thought that was amazing. There's beavers just down the road. That is fabulous. Beavers can exist in this country. And then a little bit later on, I saw Cornwall with Simon Reeve, and that was the thing that really got me thinking about this beaver project that I'm on at the moment, because there was someone called Chris Jones who runs the Cornwall Beaver Project, talking about flooding issues in the village below his farm at Laddock. And what was happening was what you see in front of you is Chris Jones's land. And the water there on this slide flows off. This is at the top of a hill, and it flows off and floods 17 houses, or it did, before Chris Jones rather innovatively put beavers there. And what beavers do is they slow the flow of water. When you get those dramatic, really heavy downpours that are caused by climate change and are predicted to get worse, what beavers do is they hold the water back simply by the action of their water engineering, by building dams. You've got a dam in the picture here, and that holds the water back. And it's just such a simple, wonderful idea, and it works. They've had academics from Exeter University turn up, monitor the flow before Chris got the beavers on his land, and then after, and there's a dramatic effect on water flow, particularly on those peak flows. So they're ironed out, and this is really important. And not only that, you get because of the action of the beavers creating more wetland, you get more wildlife there, lots more plants, lots more birds, insects. Fish are more numerous, bigger. I mean, this is incredible stuff. This is why beavers are known as a keystone species. You put them into a watercourse, and it dramatically starts off a load of other things. It's like a whole chain of events happening. And what is remarkable is that we had all those things in this country up until 400 years ago, and so for millennia, all our rivers and streams, everything across every watercourse across this country was formed by beavers, and then they were hunted to extinction, and we lost it, and then 20 generations went past, and now we're bringing them back. And that's why all these projects, not just this beaver project, all of them are just so exciting and inspiring, because we can make a difference. Everyone can make a difference, and it has to be everyone, because as Mike outlined at the start of this, the problem is so large. So everyone has to do their little bit, and you can, if I can start a beaver project, what can other people do? Loads is the answer. So anyway, getting back to this, so I contacted Chris, the Beaver Trust, and he's a remarkable individual because he inspires other people and he helps out communities. So if anyone on here wants to start a beaver project, or even just go and visit the Cornwall Beaver Project, you can, just get in touch with either me or just directly to the Beaver Trust. They've got a website at beavertrust.org, and you can go and visit this and be inspired yourself and start a beaver project in your own community. So why is this important to Braunton? Well, I as a result of talking to Chris, I went out, started talking to landowners around the catchment, and remarkably, they said, yes, we wouldn't mind beavers roaming across our land. And I wasn't expecting that. In actual fact, I was completely astounded, really, because I expected lots of resistance, but no, the majority of people were positive. So as time went on, I approached 90 landowners, and out of that 90 landowners, over 50 said yes, definitely. Sort of about 15 were, don't know, we'll have a think about it. Depends what the incentives are and if there's any money in it. And there were like a handful of no's. But even some of those no's were yeah, we don't want beavers on this particular bit of land, but we really support the project. So it was overwhelmingly positive. And then I started looking around and sending other events, and it's the same picture right across the country. It's not just here. People really love the idea of using beavers as a natural flood management. And remarkably for governments, this is just such a money-saving idea, because beavers they're so cheap in comparison to building massive flood defence schemes and pouring loads of concrete. And not only that, they're addressing our nature recovery. So it just makes so much sense. But sadly, legislation from government has not caught up. And that's where I am at the moment. We're trying to work out how to turn all these acceptances of landowners into actually beavers on the ground, roaming around the cane catchment, and doing the flood prevention and nature recovery that we all want to happen. And the issue is that although we have wonderful things like the River Otter Beaver Trial in East Devon, where beavers roam freely, you cannot do that across the whole country. And the legislation is at the moment is that you can only release beavers into the wild in enclosure, which is a very, very expensive thing. And that's where I am at the moment. We're going to put an enclosure on a farm, or we're certainly looking to do that within the catchment, just as the first stepping stone to a full catchment release. But how long that is away, I've got no idea. And okay, final slide, please. Okay, and this is the sources of information I've used. So on the parish council, I get sent emails, and they come from the parish council itself, or local wildlife groups, or Devon County Council. So that inspires me, and that's where I learn information from. I also look at Facebook groups. I'm in the Wild About Devon group, and I'm in the Devon Towns and Parish Councils for Climate Action group. And every so often an event will flash up, and I'll think that's interesting, and I'll attend. Braunton Countryside Centre, I have to say, if you haven't been there, please look at the events or attend Braunton Countryside Centre, because it's a constant source of information that will inspire you. There's a brilliant talk on Friday of this week, I think, which is from Derek Gow. It's free to attend. It's on the water vole reintroduction. So yeah, that's going to be tremendous. And he's also written a brilliant book on bringing back the beaver, which not only is really informative, it's hilarious as well. So if you like a good laugh, read that book or attend the talk on Friday evening, which is at 7 o'clock, I believe. Devon Local Nature Partnership website, also another great source of information. They put on fabulous wildlife conferences. And finally, Devon Wildlife Trust, they've got a series of wildlife events. I went to one recently that was had people from all over the country talking about their wonderful events that will inspire you. And yeah, it's well worth attending those. Thanks very much for listening to me. Oh, I haven't forgot to mention the Cane Catchment Beaver Partnership website, the Facebook page. You can keep up to date with what I'm up to on there. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the opportunity.
Brilliant.